Video game journalists are the bottom of the bottom. Like they're literally they're so deep down there, they're offending the floor. Never trust a game journalist. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. Journals meltdown over no censorship in Brown Dust 2. Call gamers degenerate gooners. Yeah, but yet you still probably very much watch Corn. I can guarantee you, the journal here very much watches Corn, which is really interesting. This is by Vara Dark. We'll go in. Also, please consider liking and subscribing. I appreciate your support. I've been paying attention to the Brown Does 2 saga, and I think with this, it comes to an end. We'll see. To be honest, at this point, I might as well subscribe to her, broski. At this point, yeah, let's go. Please support her. She's pretty cool. Also on Twitter. Regardless, we're gonna look at this. Yep. It is just interesting. I don't even know why there is even still games journalists. I'm gonna be honest. Every YouTuber, does a better job than games journalists. Who the fuck reads articles and pays these people? You gotta be like 1,000 years old at this point. It's crazy.
Video game journalists are some of the most miserable people on the internet. They are
Not on the internet, on the entire planet. Like, out of all the journalism you could have chosen, out of all the things you could have chosen to do with your life, you'll write obsolete articles on the internet about video games. And you're really bad at it too, right? It's like, I can't name a single good game journalist. Like, not even like a platform consisting of games journalists who are genuinely good. It's just crazy.
writing articles about video games, about this space that millions of people would love to get paid to talk about, and yet they're just sitting here and complaining constantly. And just a few days ago, we found out that Brown Dust 2 would not be censoring costumes, they would not be altering mini games, and now these journos are furious. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, this could have been a rare instance where they defended gamers and said, yeah, censorship is bad, so I'm glad that the game isn't being altered, even if I don't play it or don't like it, but that's not what they're doing. They're sitting here saying that Brown Dust 2 fans got so
Of course. They got so irate. Yeah. Yeah. Over gooning censorship is so weird. It's so weird, bro. It's so weird. They're never like complaining about, right? It's like, imagine having I'm calling this FDS. It's fiction derangement syndrome, okay? Where are these articles about actual corn websites involving actual human beings? Right? It's always about like pixels, right? It's fictional characters that these people target. What about like corn games that maybe even corn games that use real people? What about actual corn? Oddly enough, that one you don't target. Of course, it's game journalists, but like journalists in general, right? Why are you not targeting those? You're always just targeting fictional characters. Isn't it weird? But then again, that goes against the agenda of like, you can't criticize corn because then you criticize like women's freedom and stuff. Remember? That's really funny.
Rate over gooning censorship, in quotes, the developers have walked it back. So they are saying it wasn't censorship, you guys are just gooners, and it is ridiculous that the developers gave you what you wanted, which is insane. Even if there are games that I personally do not play or that I do not like, I would never sit here and say, I want them to be censored, and I'm glad that fans are having an experience ripped away from them. That is just an insane take to have. But it's the one Joel here has, who, by the way, is a freelance writer who bounces between several different websites. So he's just,
freelance. Maybe somebody should actually take a lens and throw it at him. Regardless, it's just so weird. Get out of here.
Somebody who is irrelevant in this industry, and none of these sites want to keep around because he's not actually talented at what he does. But it says Brown Dust 2 has landed itself in the maddening circle of rakes as its announcement that it'll be complying with requests of censorship over the weekend. Of course, this drew player ire, and in an emergency stream, they walked it back. The news comes as Brown Dust 2 had been blocked from releasing on Steam, and storefronts have begun to crack down on games with sexual content. Are they going to really get into the nitty-gritty of why this is the case? No. They simply say there are player concerns that particular countries, namely the UK, have begun to cause issues with the game.
Yeah, I could genuinely believe that it is the UK or Australia. It's either one of those two, 100%.
Over the Online Safety Act, but he doesn't get into the discussion about how video games have been censored for over a decade now to comply with certain regulatory boards, to comply with the demands of payment processors. None of that conversation, which is extremely important context because this Journo wants you to believe that the developers were like making this decision themselves because
It was outside pressure. It was outside pressure.
they
It was outside pressure. Can a man just not look at cute anime girls without being judged at this point? Jeez.
suddenly were uncomfortable with the content, which is wild. They say one character, Raphithia, appears underage. Not that she is underage because she's not. They are saying that because this character could be interpreted as underage, that's why it's okay that the developers were going to censor it. Characters Rue and Seer were also
Yeah, but you tolerate teenage sex scenes in movies and TV shows. That's suddenly not a problem. Weird priorities out here. Weird priorities.
listed, with decisions to quote unquote censor them stemming from age inappropriate styling and abusive situation framing, respectively. And another character had been aged up by swapping the school uniform concept for an older looking office fit. And on top of that, it announced that the minigame Slap Slap Pop would be changed or removed due to depictions that would be interpreted as abusive. The minigame involves the player slapping the butt of a character in time with a rhythm game. Now, if you don't
Will you also be for the banning of, let's say, 50 Shades of Grey? Because there's a lot of BDSM themes in there. Wouldn't that be considered abusive?
know what Brown Dust 2 is, it's got a lot of fan service. It is very appealing to, as they are calling it, the Gooners, but this is the entire identity of the game. So to change a handful of things might not seem like a lot to somebody who doesn't know what the game is, but it is a lot to the players, and that's why they face so much backlash. But the journos are not going to sit here and say that, yes, censorship is bad and censorship is unfair, and they're going to blame you for this being the situation the developers find themselves in because the developers walked it back. They do point out, though, that in the wake of a weekend of complaints, NeoWiz has walked back on most of this in the stream. The developer explained that it would now be moving to a per-region basis for the game, and they say that it is filled with content that isn't age-appropriate, and there are a lot of clashes on the culture side. The game is clearly not intended for kids, and still a good portion of this feels like a quick 180 to ensure that the most vocal side of the player base doesn't abandon the game entirely, which makes sense because companies ultimately need to keep their customers happy and need to make money, but they say it is also still really strange that players are irate over what does look like a child bride. So they are.
I'm gonna say this. Maybe you're the weirder one. See, if you look at a fictional character and you think child, and you think in your head sexualizing a child, then you're the weirdo, not gonna lie. Not only are you essentially saying that if a woman IRL is petite, that means she is a child, which is, you're essentially infantilizing women, though I've seen that weirdos on a particular side of things love to do that, right? Infantilizing women, like women cannot make their own decisions. Like, you know, the height of consent, we get the idea. Or the head size of consent, or the eyes of consent, you know? Again, you do not call out things that actually concern real children. You do not call out things that actually concern real human beings. Like, they criticize games for being very sexual, but OnlyFans is okay. It's like weird priorities.
Saying you have a pedo brain. I guess if you like the character designs in this game, which by the way, they're fictional characters and they're not supposed to be children, and you are really freaking weird for just viewing these characters as like child brides, but of course they want to say you are a disgusting degenerate if you happen to play a game like this. This isn't shocking. Weeks ago when we heard that
Like, are you fighting African governments and countries for allowing child marriages? Like, are you doing that? If you're not doing that, you're kind of hypocritical for complaining about this in a fictional game. Just saying.
the game was going to not be released on Steam, Kotaku had put out this article saying the Gooner Gotcha game abandoned the Steam launch after refusing to make changes. So they were basically saying it is the developers' fault that they abandoned the players, but then they were saying that it's good that this is happening because the content in this game isn't appropriate and they do not agree with the sexualization that happens in this game. There's also this article by Guru Gamer that says Brown Dust 2 censorship caused massive drama. Developers schedule live apology. It's not that they caused a massive drama. It is that they were censoring an entire game and players were upset with that. Is it drama to call out censorship? I personally do not think so. I think that it
Drama is more oftentimes like nonsensical, right? It's like two women going at each other or two dudes going at each other for something that should have been DMs. That is what I consider drama. That's not really drama. This is just a company being really retarded and listening to people that don't play their game.
is players standing up for their entertainment, defending creative freedom, and these journalists just don't seem to get that. When we had found out that they were reversing course, I did another video on it. It will be linked down below, but I think that it is a little bit of a tough situation because on one hand, I really appreciate the fact that they are not censoring anything, that they are going to try to hold their ground as much as possible, and they are not going to cave into the demands of these certain regions and regulatory boards. But on the other hand, it is tough to trust them because they initially had sort of jumped the gun. They shot first and asked questions later. They didn't gauge what reaction would be to the idea of a couple of outfits being censored. And
again, we still have to wait to see what the future of the game holds. If they're going to be careful enough and stop putting out the same stuff in that way, right? They're stop the fan service in that way, then that's going to be a problem. That's why we have to pay attention to what's actually going on. As to like, this is overall good. This is a good outcome, but we really have to be careful and look out, right? We need to be careful. As to who wanted the pressure and the censorship, who pressured and wanted the censorship, we do not know. I'd love to know.
if they could just suddenly turn around and say they're not censoring it, why did they jump at the idea of censoring it in the first place? I get that they're a company, they need to make money, and ultimately they need to sell their game in as many places as possible, but I just think that they should have handled it very differently up front, and it is a little bit hard to trust them. I 100% get.
If I had a company and I had a gotcha, I mean, it was either censor or not be played anymore, I'd die standing. I'd go US standing, then continue living and bending the knee. I'll be real.
Why people are saying we need to be cautiously optimistic and still keep a close eye on what they're doing in the future. But it is also especially hard for them when they're just trying to make their players happy. And then journalists are saying, oh, you're a pedo for liking character designs in a video game. And you're a disgusting, degenerate person. And they even try to write it off as if it's not censorship because they're saying, oh, fans got so irate over Goon and quote unquote censorship. Like it's just the developers who caved in to the demands of terrible people. So, yeah, unfortunately, they are fighting a battle on all sides right now. I will be keeping a close eye on this because I do think that they deserve praise for not censoring it off the bat. I do think that they handled it pretty freaking poorly, though. Either way, the video game journalists, the activists in this space are now furious that there is not more censorship.
And they're going to continue to cope and seethe as they should, of course, as they always should. Again, I think games journalists are the bottom of the bottom. They're the worst people imaginable in this space, and we're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see how this develops for Brown Dust 2.
And that sex appeal is not being toned down and that they did not get their way. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it.
I've said all my thoughts, and yeah. Let's hope that Brown Dust 2 doesn't change, keeps up the pace. They can recover the trust of the people, so to speak. And yeah, I'm gonna get the character that has the new free prestige thing, because that is diabolical. That is the closest you'll ever get to corn in that game. I swear to God, it's so close. Anyways, thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.